Have you ever imagined what it's like to have everything you've built destroyed in less than 2 minutes? Not by accident, not by your own mistake, but by words. Cold, calculated words, thrown in your face like a final sentence. Words that transform years of work, dedication, sleepless nights proving your worth, into nothing, into less than nothing, into shame. Sophia Reed sits in that meeting room on an ordinary Tuesday morning. It's the same room where she presented projects that saved the company millions. The same table where she closed impossible deals. The same chairs occupied by people she's known for years. Colleagues who shared coffee with her, who celebrated promotions, who witnessed every step of her career. She's 6 months pregnant. Her belly is impossible to hide now, and she feels the baby moving as she waits to understand why she's been summoned there with such urgency, with such strange formality. And then it happens. The manager, Robert, who had always been cordial, who had always praised her work, throws a folder on the table. The sound is dry. The end. And the words that come out of his mouth are even more brutal. You stole from the company. We have proof. The world stops. Literally stops. Sophia hears the words, but they don't make sense. They can't make sense. She looks around, expecting to see confusion on other people's faces, expecting someone to say that this is a grotesque mistake, an absurd misunderstanding. But what she sees is worse. Much worse. She sees closed faces, averted gazes, judging silence. They believe Averian believes it. I didn't. I never. Sophia tries to speak, but her voice comes out weak, broken, and she hates how it sounds. She hates how she already sounds guilty, just for being too shocked to defend herself properly. Robert opens the folder. Documents, transactions, signatures, all bearing her name. All showing systematic misappropriation of funds over months. Amounts totaling hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the digital signature on every document. Hers. Undeniably hers. This doesn't make sense. Sophia finally manages to say, in her hands, those hands that typed impeccable reports, that held pens in important meetings, that built a solid career tremble on the table. I didn't do this, you know I did it. But no one answers. The HR manager, Linda, who is a mother of 2, who should understand, who should at least know here, simply pushes a document toward Sophia. A letter of resignation. Already prepared. Already decided. You have 15 minutes to collect your belongings and leave the building. Security guards will escort you. And that's it. 90 seconds. Maybe less. That's how long it takes for an entire life to crumble. For a reputation built brick by brick to be blown to shreds. For the future already uncertain with a baby on the way, a relationship broken, so many unanswered questions to become a bottomless abyss. Sophia stands up. Her legs barely support her. Belly feels heavier now, as if the baby inside senses its mother's terror. And as she walks down the hallway, 2 security guards behind her. A pathetic cardboard box, with a photo of her desk and favorite mug inside. Every colleague who passes looks away. No one asks what happened. No one offers support. No one says, it must be a mistake. Because in a corporate environment, an accusation is already a conviction. And a pregnant woman accused of theft. There's no going back. There's no second chance. There's only a door closing behind her, and the deafening silence of people who chose to believe the easiest version. The version that demands nothing more from them than passive complicity. Have you ever been through this? Ever felt the ground disappear from under your feet, while people you trusted turned their backs on you? Stay with me until the end, because this story is only just beginning. And what Sophia doesn't yet know, what no one in that room knows, is that all this destruction wasn't an accident. It was meticulously planned by someone she knows very well. Someone who decided that if he couldn't have her, no one could. But there's also something the men who destroyed Sophia didn't count on. A sheriff who doesn't tolerate lies. A man who will look at this case and see exactly what everyone else refused to see. And when the truth begins to emerge from the shadows where it was buried, no one will. Be prepared for what comes next, because injustice has a specific weight. You feel it in your chest, in that tightness that won't go away, in that feeling of powerlessness that corrodes you from the inside. And when you witness it happening to another person, especially when that person is vulnerable, pregnant, alone, something inside you screams. It screams for justice, for truth, for someone to finally raise their hand and say, no, this is wrong. If something like this has ever happened to you, if you've ever been accused of something you didn't do, if you've ever felt the world turn its back on you while you shouted your innocence to deaf walls, share it in the comments. Because these stories need to be told, they need to be heard, and you are not alone in this pain. Sophia leaves that building carrying a cardboard box and an invisible weight that is infinitely heavier. She gets into the car, a modest sedan that's almost paid off, one of the few things that are still truly hers on. Simply sits there, hands on the steering wheel, gaze fixed on some empty space ahead. The baby kicks hard, as if asking, Mom, what happened? Why are you so scared? And Sophia has no answer. There's no explanation that makes sense. Because how do you explain to a life that hasn't yet been born that the world out there is cruel in ways it never imagined possible? That there are people who destroy others, not out of necessity, not for survival, but out of pure revenge, out of wounded ego, out of an inability to accept that they have been rejected. She drives home, not home anymore. A temporary apartment she rented after breaking up with Daniel, after deciding that raising a child alone was better than raising one in a toxic environment. And when she closes the door behind her, when she's finally truly alone, she breaks down. She cries in a way she hasn't cried since she was a child. She cries until she has no more tears. She cries until her whole body aches. And then, when the tears dry, and only exhaustion remains, she does the only thing she can still do. She tries to understand. She picks up her laptop. She opens the files she managed to save before losing access to the company's systems. She begins to trace every transaction that appears in the documents, every date, every amount, every detail. Because Sophia Reed is not a woman who gives up. She never has been. Even now, even broken, even with her future crumbling around her, some part of her, that's stubborn and resilient, part that helped her survive a difficult childhood, that helped her win a full scholarship to college, that helped her rise in a competitive company as a woman in a male-dominated field, refuses to accept this version of the story. If this part touched you, if you felt the silent strength of someone who refuses to give up, even when everything says to give up, leave a like. Because these stories of resistance, of fighting injustice, of refusing to be broken, they matter. And your engagement shows me that it's worth continuing to tell them. Sophia works all night, and the more she analyzes, the clearer it becomes. The fraudulent transactions occurred at times when she was documentedly elsewhere. Meetings with clients, presentations. Once, at a prenatal medical appointment, she has the receipt, the time recorded, witnesses, and the IP addresses of the computers used. They don't match hers. They don't match her location. They don't match anything that would make sense if she were truly responsible. Someone framed her, deliberately, meticulously, and Sophia has a very clear idea of who. But having an idea isn't the same as having proof. And without proof, without solid evidence to present, she's just a former employee fired for cause, trying to escape blame. Nobody will believe her. Nobody will investigate. The case is closed before it even begins. Or at least, that's what she thought. Because in a small town like Millbrook, news travels fast. And when a respected company fires a senior analyst for fraud, when that analyst is pregnant and alone, when the whole situation reeks of scandal, the local sheriff pays attention. Not because he's obligated to, but because Sheriff James Cardwell has a sharp instinct for lies. In this story, it smells like a lie from miles away. If you want to see more stories like this, stories that explore injustice, redemption, and those moments when someone finally decides to fight for what's right, subscribe to the channel, because we're only just beginning to peel back the layers of this truth. And what comes next will surprise you. James is in the office the next morning when the police report arrives. Corporate fraud. Normally, he would pass it on to the finance department, let them handle the paperwork and technical investigation. But something about the report makes him stop. Maybe it's the amount too high to be an impulse buy, too low to be worth the risk if you were truly a clever criminal. Maybe it's the timing. A woman, 6 months pregnant, allegedly committing systematic fraud. It doesn't add up. Criminals tend to avoid risks precisely when life is about to change drastically. Or maybe it's just that feeling. The one he learned to trust over 15 years of wearing a badge. The feeling that says, something is very wrong here. He picks up the keys. He decides to pay a visit to the company. Just routine questions, he tells himself. Just standard protocol. But when he gets there, when he sees the CEO and the coup, with their overly rehearsed answers, their overly tense smiles, their strange insistence that the case is solved, that there's no need for further investigation, that everything is perfectly documented, James knows, he doesn't know what still, but he knows these men are hiding something. And Sheriff James Cardwell hates it when people think they can lie to him and get away with it. Then he asks the question that changes everything. Where can I find Sophia Reed? Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because to understand the magnitude of what was taken from Sophia, you need to understand who she was before everything fell apart. You need to see the woman she built, brick by brick, sacrifice by sacrifice, over years that consumed not only time, but entire pieces of her identity. Sophia Reed wasn't born with a silver spoon in her mouth. She didn't have parents with corporate connections or a surname that opened doors. What she did have was razor-sharp intelligence and determination bordering on obsession. She entered the state university on a full scholarship, not because someone gave her the opportunity, but because she got grades that left the evaluators with no choice. She studied finance because she understood early on that money is power, and she wanted power. Not the superficial kind that buys things. The kind that ensures you'll never again depend on anyone. That you'll never again be vulnerable the way you were in childhood, when her single mother worked 3 jobs and still could barely keep the lights on. She graduated at the top of her class. She was recruited by 3 companies. She chose Morrison & Associates because it offered the best salary and the clearest career path. And from day one, Sophia worked as if her life depended on it. Because, in a way, it did. 8 years. 8 years at the same company. She started as a junior analyst, rose to full analyst in 18 months, half the usual time. Senior at 27 project. Manager at 29. She was the person leaders called when an important client was about to give up. She was the one who solved financial crises that other analysts declared unsolvable. She was the one who stayed up until midnight, reviewing reports, because good enough was never an acceptable standard for her. And yes, she sacrificed. She sacrificed weekends. She sacrificed hobbies. She sacrificed a social life that never truly existed. Relationships that died because she always prioritized one more meeting, one more project, one more chance to prove her worth. She became exactly what she planned: indispensable, respected, successful. And then Daniel Kemp entered her life. He was the director of operations, a position she secretly coveted, but knew would take several more years to achieve. Handsome, articulate, charming in the way powerful men often are. And he noticed her. Not the way bosses usually notice subordinates, with that thinly veiled predatory interest she'd learned to avoid. Daniel seemed genuinely impressed with her work, with her mind, with the way she dissected complex problems and found solutions no one else saw. It started with working lunches, discussions about corporate strategy that extended beyond work hours, and eventually, inevitably, it turned into something more. Sophia resisted at first. Relationships in the workplace were complicated, political, risky, but Daniel was persistent. And she, who had spent so much time building her career that she forgot to build a personal life, finally gave in. It was good at first, or at least, it seemed to be. Daniel was attentive, intelligent. They shared similar ambitions. And for the first time in years, Sophia allowed someone to see beyond the impeccable professional facade, allowed vulnerability, allowed hope that maybe, just maybe, she could have a career, and relationship, professional success, and personal happiness. The pregnancy wasn't planned. They were careful lore, so they thought. But it happened. And when Sophia saw those 2 lines on the test, when she felt the whole world spin on a completely new axis, her first emotion wasn't panic. It was something strange and unexpected. Joy, quiet, scared, but real. She told Daniel that same night. She waited until they were alone in his apartment, away from corporate eyes, away from office politics. And she watched as his face went through a sequence of expressions she had never seen before. Shock, anger, something that looked almost disgust. "Are you sure it's mine?" was the first thing he said. And Sophia felt a chill run through her. Because what kind of question is that coming from a man you've been with for a year? With whom you were exclusive? With whom you shared not only your body, but plans, dreams, and future? "Of course, I'm sure," she replied, and her voice came out firmer than she felt. "We talked about it. You said you were taking the pill, and it was. But nothing is 100% effective. Daniel, you know that." He remained silent for a long time, and when he finally spoke, his words were calculated, cold. "I don't want that, Sophia. I'm not ready to be a father. My career is taking off. I have 5 crucial years of growth ahead of me. A child doesn't fit into those plans. And what do you suggest I do?" "You know what I'm suggesting? Abortion." He didn't even have the courage to say the word out loud, but it was there, hanging between them like a guillotine. "No," Sophia said. Simple. Definitive. "I'm going to have this baby." And that's when everything changed. Daniel's mask, because it was a mask, Sophia realized later, it always had been fell. He became furious. He said she was ruining his life, that he did it on purpose. That he always knew ambitious women were manipulative, that they used pregnancy as a trap. Words Sophia never imagined hearing from him. Words that cut because they came from a place of deep misogyny that he had hidden well until that moment. They broke up. That night, or rather, he broke up with her. He said he didn't want any involvement with her or the child, that she was on her own in this, and he left, leaving Sophia sitting in his apartment, the apartment where she had spent so many nights, where she believed she was building something real, completely shattered. But Sophia Reed wasn't built to fall apart. So she did what she always did when life became impossible. She worked. She returned to the office on Monday with her head held high. She ignored curious glances from colleagues, who clearly knew something had happened between her and Daniel. Gossip travels fast in corporate environments. She focused on work, on the numbers, on the projects that were concrete, measurable, controllable, when her personal life was complete chaos. And for months, it worked. Daniel maintained a cold, professional distance. They interacted only when absolutely necessary, always with witnesses, always formally. Sophia worked even harder, as if she could, prove that pregnancy didn't make her any less competent, less valuable, less deserving of the position she held. She looked for a smaller apartment she could afford on her own. She started saving for unpaid maternity leave. She read books about single pregnancy, about raising a child alone, about being a successful mother and professional simultaneously. She made a plan, because Sophia always had plans. What she hadn't planned for, what she couldn't have planned for, was Daniel's silent, growing hatred. The anger that simmered every time he saw her in the meeting room, her belly growing, a constant reminder that she had rejected him, that she had chosen the baby over him. that she had moved on while he was still trapped in resentment. She didn't see when he started plotting revenge. She didn't notice the small movements, suspicious system access, documents being created, signatures being cloned. She was too busy maintaining impeccable professional performance while her body changed. While morning sickness forced her to rush to the bathroom between meetings, while exhaustion was a constant companion, Sophia believed, genuinely believed, that competence speaks louder than personal drama. That if she continued to deliver exceptional results, her pregnancy and breakup with Daniel would be mere footnotes in the story of her career. She was wrong. Because in a world where men like Daniel have real, institutional power, the kind that comes with a director's title and unrestricted access to corporate systems, a woman who rejects him doesn't go unpunished. Especially when that woman dares to keep shining, keep rising, keep proving that she doesn't need him. And then Tuesday arrived. That meeting room, that folder thrown on the table, and everything Sophia had built, every sacrifice, every extra hour, every piece of herself she gave to that company, was reduced to nothing in 90 seconds. Comment below. This makes sense to me. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because what happens after that meeting room isn't just about Sophia losing her job. It's about something far more visceral, far more destructive. It's about witnessing in real time how human beings you know, whom you trusted, whom you considered allies, choose complicit silence instead of basic questioning. It's about discovering that corporate loyalty will always trump human decency. Always. Sophia walks down the hallway that Tuesday morning carrying a pathetic cardboard boxer-framed ultrasound photo of her baby, a mug with a cheesy motivational quote she got in a secret Santa exchange, and a succulent she's kept alive for 3 years. 2 security guards walk behind her, not beside her, behind her, as if she were a dangerous criminal who could escape at any moment, as if a woman 6 months pregnant were a physical threat. And with each step, she passes people. Jennifer, from accounting, who shared hundreds of lunches with her, who cried on Sophia's shoulder when her marriage almost ended, who repeatedly said that Sophia was the best friend she had in the company. Jennifer looks down when Sophia passes. She literally studies her own shoe as if it were a fascinating archaeological artifact. Marcus, the junior analyst whom Sophia personally trained, whom she defended when management wanted to fire him for a silly mistake in his first month, who swore he would never forget her kindness. Marcus turns and walks in the opposite direction, quickly, as if proximity to Sophia could contaminate him. Sarah, an administrative assistant whom Sophia helped get a raise after discovering she was being paid less than male colleagues doing identical work, pretends to be busy with a printer that clearly has no problem whatsoever. One by one, they choose cowardice. They choose self-preservation. They choose to believe the most convenient narrative, because questioning it would require courage they simply don't have. And Sophia understands. She doesn't forgive, but she understands. Because the corporate environment doesn't reward heroes. It rewards those who keep their heads down, who don't make waves, who accept official truth without question. Defending a colleague accused of fraud. That's professional suicide. It's putting a target on your own back. It's shouting at management, "Hey, maybe you're wrong. Maybe you accused an innocent person." And nobody, absolutely nobody, wants to be that person. But knowing this intellectually doesn't make it any less painful. It doesn't make it any less devastating to see decades of professional relationships evaporate in minutes because no one has the courage to ask, "Wait, does this really make sense?" The worst, the absolute worst is Linda, the HR manager, a woman, a mother of 2, someone who, in theory, should understand the nuances of being a woman in a male-dominated corporate environment. Someone who should, at the very least, ask basic questions before destroying another woman's career. But Linda conducts the dismissal with clinical efficiency, without emotion, without hesitation, as if she were processing routine paperwork instead of ruining a human life. And when Sophia genuinely tries to explain that something is wrong, that she didn't do that there must be an error in the system, Linda simply pushes the dismissal document closer and says in a voice that doesn't allow for argument, "Sophia, we have your digital signature on all documents. We have system access. Logs. We have a complete audit trail. The evidence is irrefutable. But I don't. You have the right to contest this through legal process if you wish. But as for your position in this company, the decision is final. And that's it. There's no appeal. There's no second chance. There's no, let's investigate further, because this seems strange. There's only a door closing. There's only a career ending. There's only a pregnant woman being thrown out onto the street without ceremony or compassion." Sophia leaves the building under the strong midday sun, which seems to mock the situation. Because beautiful days shouldn't happen when her life is falling apart. It should be raining, stormy, thunderous, something that matches the inner catastrophe. She places the box in the back seat of the car and simply stands there in the parking lot, looking at the building where she spent 8 years. Mirrored windows reflect a cloudless blue sky, so indifferent, so impassive, as if nothing important had ever happened inside. The baby kicks, hard, and Sophia puts her hand on her belly, feeling the movement of life growing inside her, and something breaks. Not dramatically, not with loud sobs or physical collapse, but something fundamental inside her cracks. Because she built everything right, followed all the rules, worked harder than everyone else, sacrificed more than anyone. And yet even so, a vengeful man with access and power managed to destroy it, and nobody cared. In the hours that follow, Sophia discovers exactly how fast bad news travels. She arrives at her apartment and already has 3 messages on her cell phone. Not from colleagues offering support. From recruiters who were in the process of interviewing her for positions at other companies' processes she had started weeks ago, strategically thinking about a career change before the baby was born. They all canceled. They all used variations of the same polite excuse. We decided to go with another candidate. But Sophia knows. They saw the news. Financial consulting is a small field. Everyone knows everyone. And nobody hires someone fired for fraud. It doesn't matter if it's true. It doesn't matter if there's another version. Perception is reality. And her perception is now permanently tarnished. She opens her laptop, searches for her own name. There's nothing on news websites, yet the company probably wants to keep it discreet, avoid negative publicity. But in professional forums, in closed LinkedIn groups, rumors have already started. Someone vaguely posted about a lamentable situation at Morrison & Associates. Someone commented, "I always suspected her. Too ambitious, too ambitious." As if ambition in a woman were automatically suspect. As if wanting success were evidence of a flawed character. Sophia closes her laptop before reading any more. Because she knows where this is going. She knows how narratives are constructed. She knows that in a week, in a month, the story will be, "Do you remember that analyst from Morrison who stole hundreds of thousands, pregnant and all? How shameless. And it won't matter that she's innocent. It won't matter that she was a victim." The narrative is already written. And narratives always favor whoever has the power to tell them first. She tries calling a lawyer. 3 firms. They all say the same thing. Corporate fraud cases are expensive. Very expensive. Tens of thousands in fees just to start. And without clear proof of innocence, without witnesses willing to testify, the chances of success are minimal. It's not worth the investment, one of them says with brutal frankness. As if her life were a cost-benefit analysis. Sophia hangs up feeling nauseous, but it has nothing to do with pregnancy. She looks around the small apartment. Rent paid until the end of the month. After that, she has maybe 3 months of savings, for if she's extremely careful. And then she'll be 8, 9 months pregnant, unemployed, without references, without a way to pay rent or food or medical bills that come with pregnancy. And the baby. Oh my God, the baby. Coming in 3 months. 3 months to figure out how to rebuild an entire life that was blown to pieces. She sits on the living room floor. Not by choice, but because her legs simply can't support her anymore. And for the first time since it all began, she allows the thought she'd been pushing away to finally surface. What if I can't do it? What if this is too big? What if Daniel wins? It is at this moment, at this absolute low point where hope seems like a luxury she can no longer afford, that the phone rings. Unknown number. Sophia barely answers. Probably another recruiter canceling. Probably more bad news. Probably the universe finding new creative ways to confirm that she is completely, irrevocably screwed. But she answers, because when you're already at rock bottom, morbid curiosity about how much worse it can get is strangely compulsive. Hello, Ms. Reed. This is Sheriff James Cardwell. I would like to ask you some questions regarding your dismissal from Morrison and Associates. And something in his tone, professional but not hostile, curious but not accusatory, makes Sophia hesitate before hanging up. Are you going to arrest me? She asks, her voice sounding more tired than scared. No, ma'am. I just want to hear your side of the story. If you're willing to talk. Her version. As if her version mattered. As if anyone actually wanted to hear it. But he's offering. And Sophia Reed, even broken, even exhausted, still has that stubborn spark of survival. You can come, she says. But be warned, it's not a pretty story. The best ones are never, he replies. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Because what James Cardwell represents at that moment is not a knight in shining armor galloping to save a damsel in distress. It's something much more real, much more human, much more valuable. It's an experienced professional who knows how to recognize patterns, who has spent enough years in law enforcement to understand that truth is rarely obvious, that the guilty often seem innocent, and that the innocent, especially when they are scared and desperate, often seem guilty. James sits in the polished office of Richard Morrison, CEO of Morrison and Associates, and every fiber of his professional being registers inconsistencies. The room is exactly what you would expect. Expensive, dark wood. Panoramic city views, framed diplomas, strategically positioned to impress visitors. Morrison is behind the oversized desk. Daniel Kemp sits slightly to his right, a position of power. A position of ally. I understand you've had a delicate situation recently. James begins, pen resting on notepad, posture relaxed, but eyes attentive. He learned long ago that people talk more when they don't feel interrogated. Delicate is a kind word, Sheriff Morrison replies, and there's a performative indignation in his voice that immediately raises a red flag in James's mind. We trusted this woman for years. We gave her opportunities, and she systematically robbed us. Sophia Reed, correct? Senior analyst. That's right. 8 years at the company. Daniel speaks for the first time, and James notices how he leans slightly forward, how his hands grip the arms of the chair. We never suspected. She was convincing. Convincing. Interesting word. Not competent or professional. Convincing. As if her skill were always performance, always deception. And how did they find out? James asks, maintaining a casual tone. Morrison and Daniel exchange a quick glance. Just a fraction of a second, but James catches it and mentally makes a note. Routine audit, Morrison says. Quarterly, our finance department noticed discrepancies. What kind of discrepancies? Unauthorized transfers. Small at first, a few thousand here and there. But over the months, they added up to a significant amount, James notes. And how were they able to track down Ms. Reed specifically? Her digital signature was on all the documents. Access logs show she was logged into the system when transactions were made. The audit trail is quite clear, Sheriff. Quite clear. Everyone keeps saying that, as if they needed to convince James. Or perhaps convince themselves. Did they speak to her before she was fired? Of course, Daniel replies too quickly. We confronted her with evidence. She denied it. Obviously. Obviously, James repeats. And there's something in his tone, not exactly sarcasm, but subtle skepticism that makes Daniel blush slightly. Sheriff, with all due respect, Morrison interjects, his voice taking on a patronizing tone. I know you're doing your job, but this case is pretty straightforward. We have complete documentation. We have digital evidence. We have witnesses who can confirm her suspicious behavior. What kind of behavior? Another hesitation. Another glance exchanged. Secrecy, Daniel finally says. Working odd hours. Being evasive when questioned about projects. James stops taking notes. He looks directly at Daniel. That's not illegal. Dedicated workers often have irregular hours. And as for confidentiality, well, financial consulting deals with confidential client information, right? A certain level of discretion is expected. Sure, but was Ms. Reed pregnant at the time of her dismissal? Silence. Heavy, uncomfortable. It is. Morrison finally confirms. But I don't see the relevance of that to just setting some context, James says softly. Pregnant woman. Single, I presume. Working overtime. Being careful with confidential information. He pauses, deliberately. From an external standpoint, this looks like a dedicated employee trying to secure her position before maternity leave. Not a criminal. Sheriff, Daniel, is now visibly irritated. With all due respect, you're not seeing any evidence. You're making assumptions based on I'm doing my job, Mr. Kemp, which includes listening to all versions before forming a conclusion. James closes his notebook and stands up. I'll need to copy documentation, audit records, system access logs, and I'll need Ms. Reed's current address. She doesn't work here anymore. We don't have, I'm sure the HR department has emergency contact information, or an address to send final termination documentation to. James smiles, but there's no warmth in it. Unless you were fired without proper procedure. Morrison picks up the internal phone. He murmurs something to his assistant. Minutes later, the secretary enters with a piece of paper. The address is written neatly. Thank you for your cooperation, James says, taking a piece of paper. I'll get in touch if I have any further questions. He's almost at the door when Daniel speaks again. Sheriff, do you really think this is necessary? The case is closed. She confessed through silence. She didn't contest. The evidence. James stops. He turns slowly. Mr. Kemp, in my 15 years doing this job, I've learned something important. Innocent people often remain silent. Not because they are guilty, but because they are too shocked, too frightened, or simply too defeated to fight against a machine that has already decided to condemn them. He holds Daniel's gaze. And the guilty people often speak. Too much they over-explain. They over-justify. Interesting, don't you think? He leaves before anyone can respond. In the car, James sat for a moment, processing the conversation. Everything was wrong. Not blatantly nothing he could point to as definitive proof of a lie, but subtly, like a painting that seems correct until you realize shadows are falling in the wrong direction. Executives too eager to close the case, responses too rehearsed, body language too defensive, and that hesitation when he mentioned talking to Sophia as if his presence near her was a threat. James picks up the phone. He dials the number that's on the paper. It rings 3 times before a female voice answers. Tired, cautious. Hello, Ms. Reed. This is Sheriff James Cardwell. I would like to ask you some questions regarding your dismissal from Morrison and Associates. Pause. He hears her breathing on the other end. Then, are you going to arrest me? The question catches him off guard. Not because of the content people accused of crimes often ask that, but because of the tone. There's no real fear. There's exhaustion, resignation, as if prison were just the next inevitable item on a list of tragedies. No, ma'am. I just want to hear your side of the story. If you're willing to talk. Another pause. A longer one. And then, You can come. But be warned, it's not a pretty story. The best ones never are. James replies automatically, but then he thinks about his own words. Because it's true. The stories that matter, the ones that truly reveal human nature, are never simple, never clean. They're complicated and messy and full of nuances that police reports don't capture. He drives to the address, an apartment in a neighborhood that's trying to gentrify, but hasn't quite succeeded yet. An old building, but well-maintained. It's not a favela, but it's also not a place a senior analyst earning 6 figures would voluntarily choose. James rings the doorbell. Wait, the door opens. And everything he had mentally prepared, all the carefully formulated questions, the entire interrogation strategy, all the professional skepticism, falters for a moment. Because Sophia Reed doesn't look like a criminal. She doesn't look like a calculating manipulator who stole hundreds of thousands. She looks like an exhausted, pregnant woman who's been through hell. Swollen eyes, wrinkled clothes. But that's not what makes James truly. It's an apartment behind her. Meticulously stacked documents on the desk. An open laptop displaying spreadsheets. Notebooks covered in detailed notes. Colorful post-it notes organizing information. This isn't a scene of someone fleeing guilt. It's a cyber war of a desperate person trying to prove their innocence. Sheriff Cardwell, she says, and there's dignity in her voice despite everything. Come in. James enters. He looks around. He sees more details. Books on pregnancy stacked next to forensic accounting manuals. Printouts of bank statements, highlighted and annotated. A handwritten timeline attempting to reconstruct each questionable transaction. And he knows. Not yet certain he could hold up in court. Not yet with evidence he could present to the prosecutor. But he knows, with instinct honed over years of seeing liars and victims, guilty and innocent. Sophia Reed is telling the truth. And the men at Morrison and Associates are lying. Now he just needs to prove it. Comment below. This makes sense to me. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Because what happens in that small apartment in the hours that follow is not just a police interrogation. It's something much rarer and more precious. It's a moment where two people, complete strangers, until minutes before recognize something fundamental in each other. Integrity under pressure. Truth even when lying would be easier. And an absolute refusal to give up, even when everything says to give up. James sits in the chair Sophia offers, removing his hat and placing it on his lap in a gesture that is part professional habit, part unconscious respect. The apartment is smaller than he expected. Much smaller. The living room and kitchen are practically the same space. He sees a half-open door leading to what is probably a tiny bedroom. The bathroom must be even smaller. This is not a place where a senior analyst lives voluntarily. This is a place you go when you run out of options. Coffee, Sophia offers, already moving toward the kitchen before he can answer. He notices how her hands tremble slightly as she picks up the cup. He also notices how she moves with deliberate purpose, as if keeping busy is the only thing preventing total collapse. Only if it's not inconvenient, James replies, observing, no, it's not. She turns on an old coffee maker that makes too much noise. Besides, I need to keep my hands busy or I'll go crazy. Brutal honesty. James appreciates that. Most people in her position would try to appear composed, controlled, innocent in a calculated way. Sophia doesn't even try. While the coffee brews, she returns to her desk covered in documents. She begins organizing papers without James asking, creating logical piles, preparing a presentation she clearly rehearsed mentally hundreds of times. So, she says, not looking at him yet, focused on obsessive organization, I imagine Morrison and Daniel gave you their version. The ambitious analyst who became greedy. The trusted employee who betrayed that trust. Let me guess. They showed you documents, digital signatures, access logs. All very convincing. They showed it, James confirms. He takes out his notepad, but doesn't open it yet. He just watches her. And you believed them. Now, she looks at him, and James sees in her eyes, not anger, but genuine curiosity, as if his answer truly mattered. I came here, didn't I? He replies. If you believed completely, you wouldn't be sitting in your living room, drinking your coffee. Sophia laughs, but it's a humorless sound. Fair enough. She picks up the first stack of documents. Then let me show you why. Everything they told you is a meticulously constructed lie. And for the next 40 minutes, James watches a transformation. Sophia Reed may be emotionally broken. She may be pregnant and scared and financially devastated. But when she starts explaining numbers, when she delves into transaction details and metadata and timelines, she becomes a different person. Focused, brilliant, relentless. Look at this transaction, she says, pointing to a highlighted document. $53,000. Transferred on March 15th at 2:47 p.m. My digital signature is there. But I was in a meeting with a client at that time. An in-person meeting. At the client's office, which is 40 minutes away. I have a calendar showing the appointment. I have a parking receipt from their building. I have an email from the client thanking me for the meeting, sent at 4:15 p.m., mentioning the 2-hour discussion we had. She pushes evidence toward James. He examines it. Everything seems legitimate. So how does your digital signature appear in this transaction? He asks. Because someone with administrative access cloned credentials. It's not difficult if you have the right level of permission in the system. And directors have that level. Daniel Kemp. Sophia hesitates, and James really sees pain cross her face. Not guilt, not anger yet. Just the deep hurt of someone betrayed by the person they loved. Probably. But I can't prove it yet. Tell me about him, James says, closing his notepad. Completely. Shifting from formal interrogation to human conversation. About you. And something in his tone, perhaps gentleness. Perhaps a lack of judgment makes Sophia finally crumble a little. She sits heavily in the opposite chair, her hand automatically going to her stomach. We dated for a year. He was the director of operations. I was an analyst. I broke my own rule about workplace relationships because he seemed different. He seemed genuine. She laughs bitterly. Idiot, right? Believed that powerful men truly saw me as an equal. That it wasn't just about conquest and the pregnancy. It wasn't planned. But when it happened, I wanted it. He didn't. He said to have an abortion or deal with it alone. I chose to deal with it alone. She looks directly at James, and I think that was unforgivable for him. Not the pregnancy, but the fact that I chose a baby over him, that I rejected his solution, that I moved on. James mentally notes it down. Reason, motive, powerful. Man rejected by a woman who should be grateful for his attention. It's a story he's seen before, and it never ends well. Do you have more examples? Other transactions with alibis. I have 7. 7 different transactions where I can prove I was physically elsewhere when they occurred. 3 during prenatal medical appointments. 2 at external meetings with clients. 1 during a flight to a conference in Chicago. I have the plane ticket, hotel receipt, and time-stamped photos from the event. She pushes more documents through. James examines each one, and each one tells the same story. Sophia's digital signature, used when she was demonstrably elsewhere. Why didn't internal audit catch this? He asks. Because nobody looked. When you have a digital signature and access logs showing the correct login, it's assumed that person was there. You don't cross-reference personal calendars or physical locations unless you have reason to suspect. She pauses. And Daniel made sure I was an obvious suspect. Recently single employee, pregnant, probably desperate for money. The narrative sells itself. James leans back, processing. Did you take this to someone? Human resources. A lawyer. I tried HR. Linda, the manager, didn't even look at the evidence. She said the decision was made. I tried 3 lawyers. They all said that a corporate fraud case costs $50,000 or more in fees, with no guarantee of winning. I have maybe 15,000 in savings, and I need that to survive. Until she looks at her belly. Until this happens and I figure out how to be an unemployed single mother with a ruined reputation. Her voice breaks on the last word. And for the first time since James arrived, he sees tears. Not dramatic sobs, just silent tears streaming down her face as Sophia remains seated upright, refusing to fully break down. James feels a tightening in his chest. He spent his entire career maintaining professional distance. He doesn't get emotionally involved. He doesn't let cases get too close. It's a basic rule of survival for anyone in law enforcement. But something about this woman, about her determination, her refusal to lie or manipulate, about the way she fights even when everything is against her, pierces the defenses he's built. "Ms. Reed," he says, his voice softer than he intends. "May I take copies of these documents? I want to examine them more closely. And I want to speak with a digital forensics expert I know." Sophia quickly wipes her face. "Do you believe me?" James hesitates, because believing is not the same as proving. But then he looks at her, looks in her eyes, the same thing he sees in a mirror when he's working on a case that truly matters, an unwavering determination to find the truth, no matter the cost. "I believe you're telling the truth," he finally replies. "And I believe someone at Morrison and Associates is lying. Now I need to prove it." "Why?" Sophia asks, and there's real vulnerability in the question. "Why do you care? You don't know me. This isn't even technically your case. Corporate fraud usually goes to finance or federal departments. You could just pass it on and forget about it." James is silent for a moment, because she's right. He could, he should, probably. But then he thinks of the wife he lost. He thinks of how the medical system failed her, how doctors ignored symptoms until it was too late, how no one really fought for her when they should have. And he swore after she died, after he was left alone at home, too angry and guilty to go anywhere, that if he saw someone being failed by the system, someone being ignored when they should have been heard, he would fight. Because it's right, he finally says. Simple, true, and because men like Daniel Kemp shouldn't get away with destroying lives just because they have the power to do so. Sophia looks at him for a long moment, and then, for the first time since James arrived, she smiles. Small, tired, but real. "Thank you," she whispers. "You don't know how much." "Thank you." James nods, uncomfortable with gratitude. He takes stacks of documents Sophia offers. He promises to call with updates. He's almost at the door when he turns. "Ms. Reed, one last thing. Do you have somewhere to go if the situation worsens?" She hesitates. "I'll find out." That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. And James leaves that apartment with more than just documents. He leaves with a renewed sense of purpose. And with the determination that Sophia Reed won't face this alone, not if he can help it. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Because 2 weeks is enough time for hope to begin to grow. Enough time for Sophia to wake up in the morning and think, just for those precious seconds before reality crushes her, that maybe everything will be all right. That Sheriff Cardwell will find something. That truth will emerge. That justice truly exists. And then the envelope arrives. Sophia is making coffee when she hears the sound of mail falling through the crack in the door. An automatic, mundane movement, something she's done 1,000 times. She walks to the entrance, still in her pajama ship maternity clothes. She bought at a discount store because her regular clothes no longer fit and she can't afford expensive brands. She picks up the stack of letters, bills, advertisements, and then she sees an official envelope, a stamp from the public prosecutor's office. Her hands tremble as she opens it. Words mingle on the page. Legal jargon, dense paragraphs. But the essence is crystal clear, brutal, definitive. The state versus Sophia Ann Reed. Formal criminal charge, misappropriation of corporate funds, forgery of documents, wire fraud. And then, at the end of the second page, in cold, bureaucratic language that fails to capture the magnitude of what it's saying. If convicted, the defendant faces a sentence of 5 to 7 years in a state correctional institution. 5 to 7 years. The paper falls from her hands. It floats to the floor like a dead leaf, and Sophia simply stands there, motionless in the middle of the tiny room, with the morning sun streaming through the curtainless window, feeling reality crushing her. 5 to 7 years. The baby will be born in 2.5 months. If she goes to trial, if she is convicted and with the evidence Daniel planted, how could she not be? She will give birth in prison. She will hold her child, for the first time with handcuffs on her wrists. She will have perhaps hours, perhaps days if she is lucky, before the baby is taken from her. So what? Adoption system, temporary family, strangers raising her child while she rots in a cell for a crime she didn't commit. Or worse, much worse. Daniel could ask for custody. Biological father, respected director of a prestigious company, versus mother convicted of fraud. There would be no competition. Judge would give the baby to Daniel without hesitation. The man who destroyed her would raise her child. He would use that child as the ultimate trophy, as proof that he had won. And every time the child asked about his mother, Daniel would tell his version. The criminal, the liar, the woman who didn't even deserve to be remembered. Sophia feels her knees buckle. She slides to the floor, her back against the wall, and for the first time since the nightmare began, she panics, genuinely. Not the controlled fear that made her obsessively work on the documents, not the productive worry that kept her focused, but raw, primal, visceral terror. She can't breathe. She literally can't get enough air. Her chest tightens, her vision narrows, her hands tingle. And the baby kicks frantically, as if sensing its mother's panic and responding with its own fear. Calm down. You need to calm down. The baby needs you to calm down. But she can't, because there's no way to calm down when her worst nightmare is no longer an abstract possibility. It's documented reality. It's a formal criminal process. It's the entire state, with all its resources, all its power, all its authority citing that she's guilty before she even steps into a courtroom. Hours pass. Sophia doesn't move from the floor. The sun streams across the room, creating patterns of light she can't see. The phone rings 3 times. She doesn't answer. She can't do anything but sit there and try to process the impossibility of the situation. How do you fight against that? As a single person, pregnant, without money, without a lawyer, without allies, fighting against the entire machinery of the legal system. It's like trying to stop a train with your bare hands. It's suicide. Perhaps she should accept a plea deal. Part of her whispers, perhaps she should confess to something she didn't do, accept a lighter sentence, at least ensure she gets out while her son is still a child. He'll still get to know her. He'll still have a chance at a relationship. But another part, that stubborn part that has always defined her, that made her survive a difficult childhood and build a career against all odds, screams, no to fussing, is surrendering. It's letting Daniel win completely. It's teaching your son that justice doesn't exist, that liars always win, that fighting isn't worth it. She is caught between impossibilities. Fight and probably lose everything. Or surrender and definitely lose everything. There is no good choice. Only degrees of devastation. As darkness falls in, Sophia vaguely realizes she's spent the entire day on the floor. She finally moves. She picks up the phone. Her hands are still trembling so much that it takes her 3 tries to dial correctly. Play it once, twice, 3 times. Cardwell. His voice is straight, professional, but there's something deeper, tiredness, perhaps, or just the end of a long shift. Sheriff. Sophia's voice comes out broken, unrecognizable. It's me, Sophia. Immediate silence. And then his tone changes completely. What happened? The criminal proceedings. Formal, 5 to 7 years if convicted. She tries to continue, but her voice fails her. She takes a deep breath, tries again. James, they're going to arrest me. And when the baby is born, they're going to take him. They'll give him to Daniel or put him in the system. I'm going to lose my son. I'm going to lose him. All. She hears movement on the other end. The sound of keys. An engine starting. Where are you? James asks. And there's real urgency in his voice now. At home. In the apartment. Stay there. Don't go out. Don't talk to anyone. I'm leaving. James, you don't need to stay there. Sophia. It's not a request. It's an order. But there's something more to it. Protection. A promise. 20 minutes. Hold on tight. He hangs up. Sophia sits in the dark, clutching her phone to her chest, and for the first time in hours, she manages to breathe a little easier. Not because the situation has changed, not because the danger has lessened, but because someone is coming. Someone cares enough to drop everything and drive to her in the middle of the night. She is not completely alone, yet. James drives as if demons are chasing him. Emergency lights on even outside of an official call, because technically it's not an emergency. Technically, it's just a distressed person needing support. But nothing about Sophia's tone sounded technical. It sounded like someone hanging by their fingers, over the edge of a cliff, about to fall. And James has spent far too much time in the last 2 weeks investigating her case, discreetly talking to digital forensics experts, reviewing system logs, comparing timelines, to let her fall now. He already knows the truth. He knows that Daniel Kemp used administrative access to clone Sophia's credentials. He knows that transactions were made from a computer in his office. He knows that metadata in documents signed by Sophia doesn't match her machine. He has evidence. He has proof. But evidence takes time to process. Proof takes time to formally present. And time is a luxury Sophia no longer has. James parks in front of her building. He climbs the stairs 2 steps at a time. He knocks on the door. Sophia opens the door immediately, as if she were waiting on the other side. And James sees, her face stained with tears, her eyes red, her whole body trembling. But he also sees, she is still standing. She is still struggling to maintain her composure. May I come in? He asks softly. She nods, stepping back. James enters, closes the door behind him, and then he does something that goes against all professional training. He opens his arms. Sophia hesitates for only a second before collapsing against him. She cries in loud, muffled sobs against his chest, her hands clutching his jacket as if it were the only anchor point in a stormy ocean. And James simply holds on. He doesn't say he'll be okay, that would be a lie. And she'd know it. He doesn't offer empty platitudes. He only offers a solid presence, a temporary refuge. Eventually the sobs subside. Sophia pulls away, wiping her face in embarrassment. I'm sorry, I don't usually break down like this. You have the right, James says. The situation is impossible. No one would expect you to maintain perfect composure. He guides her to the sofa. He sits beside her. And then, in a firm and decisive voice, Sophia, listen. I've found something. Real evidence. That Daniel forged documents. I have a digital forensics expert ready to testify. I have a timeline showing the physical impossibility of you having made these transactions. I have a case. Her eyes widened. You have it, I have it. But it will take time to formally present it, to convince the prosecutor to reconsider. And time is an issue right now. So what do I do? James takes a deep breath. Because the next part goes against protocol, against the rules, against everything he's been taught about appropriate boundaries between police officer and civilian. You fight, and I fight with you. Not as sheriff acting in an official capacity, but as someone who won't let injustice happen when I have the power to stop it. Sophia looks at him, really looks in. She sees something there that frightens and comforts her simultaneously. Absolute determination. Total commitment. Why are you doing this? She whispers. You're risking your career. your reputation, everything. Because some things are bigger than a career. James holds her gaze. And because if I don't do it, who will? Comment below. This makes sense to me. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Because what James faces in the days following that night is not just a professional dilemma. It's a complete identity crisis. Who is he when his badge isn't on his chest? What does it mean to be a police officer when law and justice aren't synonymous? And how far does his loyalty go to the system he swore to serve, or to the truth that the system is ignoring? He's sitting in his office at 6 in the morning. He arrived early because he couldn't sleep anyway. His desk is covered in files that technically shouldn't be there. Records from the Morrison and Associates company that he obtained through creative means. Not exactly illegal, but definitely in a gray area that the captain wouldn't approve of. The captain's phone rings. James stares at the device as if it were a venomous snake. 3. Rings 4. He could ignore it. Pretend he hasn't arrived yet. But running away has never been his style. Cardwell, he answers. My office. Now, Captain Miller's voice is pure ice. And then, the line dies. James knows what's coming. Swallowing hard is a reflex he can't control. He puts away files, locks drawers, and walks down the hall to the captain's office, like a man going to his own execution. Miller is behind the desk, his face sculpted from granite. 60 years of service, 30 of them as a captain. A man James respects more than anyone else in the force. A man whose approval matters in ways James rarely admits, even to himself. Sit down. James sits down. Miller places the folder on the table. He pushes it toward James. Do you know what this is? James acknowledges. His report on the Sophia Reed case. The initial one. The one that was filed away. The one that should have ended his involvement. Yes, sir. Okay. So explain to me why I received a call yesterday from the CEO of Morrison and Associates complaining that you are harassing his employees, asking unauthorized questions, pressuring the IT department for access to records without a warrant, continuing an investigation that was officially closed. Every word is hammered home, accusation, condemnation. Captain, I'm not finished. Miller leans forward. I also received a call from the prosecutor's office, saying that you submitted unsolicited evidence in a case that is no longer your responsibility. Evidence that, incidentally, was obtained through questionable methods. The evidence is solid. It proves that Sophia Reed was, I'm not interested. Miller's voice explodes in the small room. It's not a scream. It's worse. It's controlled disappointment. Hale, you're one of the best investigators I have. But this. He slams his fist on the briefcase. This is obsession. This is you crossing lines you shouldn't cross. She is innocent. Maybe. Probably. But it's not. Your work, prove it. Your job was preliminary investigation. You did it. You delivered the report. End of story. The rest is up to the prosecution and the defense. What if the defense lacks resources? What if an innocent woman goes to prison because no one in power is willing to fight for her? Then it's a system failure. It's not your personal responsibility to fix it. James feels anger rising, that cold anger that is more dangerous than hot fury. With all due respect, Captain, if everyone thought like that, the system would never change. Injustices would continue indefinitely. What if everyone decided to become vigilantes, acting outside of protocol? We'd have anarchy. Miller takes a deep breath, clearly trying to control his own temper. Hale, I understand impulse. I understand wanting to do the right thing. But there are ways to do it right. Appropriate channels, procedures that take months. She doesn't have months. The baby is due in 10 weeks. It's not my problem. And it's not yours. Heavy pause. Or at least, it shouldn't be. And something in his tone makes James stop. Really look at the captain. And see not just professional anger. See concern. You're too involved in this, Miller says. his voice softer now. I see how you talk about the case. About Sophia Reed. This has stopped being about justice and has become personal. And is that a problem? That's when judgment gets clouded. When it makes you risk your career, your reputation, everything you've built. Miller leans back. Hale, you have a bright future here. 5, 6 years, you could be sitting in this chair. But don't burn yourself out over some civilian you met 3 weeks ago. Civil as if Sophia were a statistic, a case number, not a real person with a real life falling apart. So, what are you ordering me to do? James asks, keeping his voice carefully neutral. I'm ordering you to drop it. Completely. No further investigation. No further contact with Sophia Reed. No further involvement. You go back to your regular job. Let the prosecution do their job. What if their job is to condemn innocent women? Then she appeals. She hires a better lawyer. She fights through the proper legal channels. Miller sighs. Hale, I know it seems unfair, but we can't save everyone. And trying will destroy you. I've seen it happen. Good cops with hearts too big breaking down because they can't get free. James remains silent. Because Miller is right in a logical, rational, professional level. He is completely right. James Noit can save everyone. No, you must get personally involved. No, she should risk everything for someone she barely knows. But then she thinks of Sophia that night. Raw terror in her voice. Trembling hands. Baby moving in her belly as she crumbled. And she thinks, if he backs down now, if he obeys orders and drops the case, she will be completely alone. No lawyer. No resources. No one fighting for her. And the baby. It will be born in prison. Or it will be given to the man who destroyed its mother out of revenge. Did you understand, Hale? Miller pressed. I need to hear you say it. James could lie. He could say yes, sir, and continue investigating secretly. But lying has never been part of who he is. I understand the order, he says carefully. But I can't promise to obey. Absolute silence. Miller stares at him, and James stares back. Are you really willing to throw your career away for this? I'm determined not to be the kind of police officer who turns their back when an innocent person needs help, even if it costs me my badge. Miller closes his eyes. He seems to age 10 years in seconds. So you leave me no choice. You're suspended. 2 weeks. No pay. And if I hear you got involved in the Morrison case during your suspension, it's grounds for dismissal. Got it. That. James nods slowly. I understand. Badge and weapon table. Now James stands. He removes his badge from his belt. Familiar weight. Comforting shape. He holds it for a moment, this piece of metal that has defined who he is for 15 years. Then he places it on the table. Gun follows. You're an idiot, Miller says. But there's something in his voice that isn't anger. Maybe it's reluctant respect. A noble idiot, but an idiot nonetheless. I've been called the worst before. James leaves the office. He walks down the hallway where he spent so much time. Colleagues stare news, travels fast in a small precinct. Some with pity, some with disapproval. One or two with something that looks like admiration. He grabs his coat, his car keys, and leaves the building as a civilian for the first time in 15 years. I should feel loss. I should feel regret. But all she feels is clarity. Because finally, there is no conflict between duty and conscience. Finally, she doesn't need to balance protocol and truth. He's just a man now. No badge, no official authority, no institutional power. But with an absolute determination to do the right thing. Sophia is in the apartment when he calls. I need to see you, James says without preamble. Can we talk? Sure. Did something happen? I'll tell you in person. 15 minutes. When he arrives, she notices immediately. You're not in uniform. No. He enters, and there's something different about him. Light, free. I've been suspended. 2 weeks. I'll possibly lose my job completely if I continue investigating. Her face pales. James, no, you can't. Because of me, it's not. Because they are, because it's right. And because I choose this. He takes her hands. Sophia, without a badge, without official authority, I have more freedom to investigate in ways I couldn't before. I have contacts. I have experts who owe me favors. And now I have full-time availability. But your job, it's just work. I can find another job. But you can't find another chance to prove your innocence. You can't find another opportunity to be with your baby. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to destroy their case. I'm going to expose Daniel Kemp. And I'm going to make sure you're free when that baby is born. Tears streamed down her face. Why? Why are you risking everything? And James realizes that he doesn't have an answer that makes logical sense. Only raw emotional truth. Because when I look at you, I see a fight worth fighting for. And because a long time ago, I swore to protect people. A badge doesn't change that. It just makes it more complicated. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Because what grows between James and Sophia in the weeks that follow isn't a movie romance. There are no kisses in the rain or dramatic declarations. It's something more subtle, deeper, more real. It's intimacy built on shared silences and exposed vulnerabilities. It's a connection forged not despite impossible circumstances, but through them. James shows up at her apartment the morning after the suspension. He knocks on the door at 8, holding a brown paper bag that smells of fresh bread and coffee. When Sophia opens it still in her pajamas, hair messy, eyes showing a sleepless night, he simply lifts the bag. I brought breakfast. I thought we could work on the schedule today. If you're willing, she should say no. She should protect him from getting more involved. But the truth is, she needs him. Not just practical help, but his presence. The feeling of not being completely alone against the whole world. Come in, she says, stepping back. They eat in silence at first, bagels, with cream cheese, fruit, decaf coffee for her because caffeine isn't recommended during pregnancy, and James researched that. Sophia notices. Of course, she notices. A man she barely knows researched pregnancy dietary restrictions and brought appropriate coffee. So, James finally says, wiping his hands on a napkin, I spent the night reviewing access logs I could get my hands on. And there's an interesting pattern. He opens his laptop, his personal one, not a police one. He shows her a complex spreadsheet. Every time a fraudulent transaction occurred, there was a simultaneous login from 2 different computers using his credentials. One was his regular workstation, and the other was from an unidentified location on the company network. Sophia leans forward, studying the data. This proves that someone was using my identity while I was logged in normally. Exactly. Their security system is outdated. It doesn't detect multiple logins as an anomaly, but it leaves a trace. And that trace clearly shows that while you were working on your computer, on normal projects, someone was simultaneously making fraudulent transactions from another location. Can you identify the location? Not yet. But I have a friend, a former colleague, who now works in private cybersecurity, who can. I just need to convince him to do me a favor, without involving official authorization. James, Sophia says softly, you've already lost your job because of me. You can't continue. I haven't lost yet. Just suspended. And even if I lose, he pauses, choosing his words carefully. I've already decided it's worth it. They work through the rest of the morning. James making calls, pressing contacts, calling in favors. Sophia organizing documents, creating visual timelines, highlighting inconsistencies. It's meticulous, exhausting work, but there's comfort in the routine, in the partnership. Around noon, Sophia's stomach growled loudly. She blushed. James smiled, the first time she'd seen a real smile from him. Not just a polite one, but a genuine one. When was the last time you ate something substantial? He asks. The breakfast you brought. Before that? Sophia hesitates. Yesterday, maybe. James decisively closes his laptop. Let's go out. James, we don't need your eating for 2. and working on a case that demands all your mental processing power. You need proper nutrition. He's already standing, grabbing his coat. I know a place that makes the best pastrami sandwich in town. And before you argue, it's not charity. It's a strategic investment in my volunteer investigator. She laughs. She can't help it. And she realizes she hasn't laughed in weeks. Volunteer researcher. You have an eye for detail that I don't, and you understand financial systems in a way I never will. So yes, volunteer investigator. Essential to the case. They leave. It's a cold but sunny day. The kind of autumn afternoon where the light is golden and the air has an invigorating bite. They walk 3 blocks to a small delicatessen that Sophia had never noticed before. The place is cozy, smelling of freshly baked bread and pickles, with old photos of New York on the walls. James orders for both of them. Pastrami for him, turkey for her because processed meats have restrictions during pregnancy, and again, he did his research. They sit at a corner table, and for the first time since the nightmare began, Sophia feels something resembling normalcy. "Tell me about your wife," she says as they eat. It's a bold question, perhaps invasive, but something in her needs to understand who this man is, who is risking everything for her. James is quiet for a long moment. Then, "Sarah. I met her in college. She was studying nursing. I was in criminal justice. We got married young 23, 24. Everyone said we were idiots, that it wouldn't last. We lasted 12 years. How did she die? Ovarian cancer. Stage 4 when it was finally diagnosed. She had symptoms for months: abdominal pain, bloating, fatigue. But her doctor said it was stress, that she needed to relax. That young women don't get ovarian cancer." Bitterness tinges his voice. When they finally did the proper tests, it had already metastasized. 18 months later, she was gone. "I am really sorry. The worst part is that I was there. I heard her complaining about symptoms, and I believed the doctor. I trusted the system, I thought. They know what they're doing. They won't ignore something serious." He looks at Sophia, but they ignored it, and I let them. I didn't push hard enough. I didn't demand a second opinion. I didn't fight for her the way I should have. "James, you're not a doctor. There was no way you could have known." It was like question. There was a way to not accept an inadequate response. There was a way to be her advocate, instead of assuming that the authorities know best. He pauses. "That's why I can't drop your case. Because I see the same thing happening. The system failing you. Authorities ignoring obvious truth, and everyone expecting you to just accept it. To trust the process. But the process can fail. I've been through it." Sophia felt tears burning. "It's not your responsibility to fix what happened to Sarah by saving me. I know. My therapist told me the same thing. Several times." He smiles sadly. "But intellectual knowledge and the emotional capacity to let go are different things. And maybe helping you will help me too. I don't know. I just know I can't turn my back on you." They finish lunch in a more comfortable silence. They walk back slowly, without rushing, and Sophia realizes she's enjoying his company, not just grateful for his help, but genuinely appreciating his company. The way he thinks, how he cares without being suffocating, how strong he is without being domineering. It's dangerous, because she's too vulnerable, too dependent. It would be too easy to confuse gratitude with affection, to confuse the relief of not being alone with real attraction. But when she looks at James, really looks beyond the surface, she sees more than a temporary savior. She sees a complex man carrying his own wounds, his own guilt, his own fears. She sees a partner in the struggle, not a rescuer on a pedestal. And this is different. Nights become routine. James shows up at 7, always with food. Never the same obvious excuses: "I was passing by, I overdid it," just silent action. Soup, when she casually mentions that her stomach is upset. Fruit smoothie, when he notices she looks pale. A full, balanced dinner, when he realizes she's spent the whole day working on documents without stopping to eat. They work side by side, sometimes in total silence, just the sound of keys and papers. Other times, talking about the case, but also about other things. Favorite movies, music that defines them, childhood memories, fears about the future. One night, 3 weeks after they started working together, Sophia is stretching her aching back when she feels a particularly strong kick. She grimaces involuntarily. "Are you okay?" James asks immediately. "Yes, it's just, the baby is active tonight." She places her hand on her belly, smiling despite the discomfort. "I think he's upset with the posture I've been maintaining. Hunched over documents for hours." James hesitates. Then, with almost reverent caution, "Mate, Sophia understands without him finishing. "You can." He moves closer. He places his large, careful hand on her belly. And at that exact moment, as if the baby knew she had a new audience, a strong kick pushes against his palm. The expression on James's face is indescribable. Wonder, awe, something close to pain. This is ours. It's life. Real, concrete. It completely depends on me not to mess it up. You're not going to mess it up. His voice is firm. You're going to be an amazing mother. Because you fight. Because you care. Because you don't give up even when the whole universe tells you to. How do you know? You barely know me. James finally pulls his hand away, but maintains eye contact. I've known you for 3 weeks. In those 3 weeks, I've seen you face criminal charges, abandonment by colleagues, the possibility of imprisonment, and the loss of a child. And instead of falling apart, you organized evidence. You built a defense. You fought with every ounce of strength you have. That tells me everything I need to know about character. Something changes in the air between them. It becomes denser, more charged. Sophia feels it, and she knows James feels it too. I trust you, she whispers. Completely. And that scares me. Because the last time I trusted someone like that, I am not Daniel. I know, but I don't know if I can risk it again. Not now. Not when everything is so fragile. I'm not asking you to take a risk. James steps back slightly, giving her space. I'm just saying, you're not alone. And you won't be. No matter what happens with the case. No matter how long it takes. I'll stay. Comment below. This makes sense to me. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Because the truth that James discovers doesn't arrive like a dramatic flash of lightning. It arrives like a puzzle, assembled piece by piece over sleepless nights, favors called upon, contacts pushed to their limits. It arrives through meticulous and obsessive work that consumes every hour of his suspended animation. It is on the 20th day, 8 days before the suspension ends, 6 weeks before Sophia's baby is born, that his friend in cybersecurity finally calls. James, I'm Marcus. You'll want to see this. They meet at a discreet cafe far from the city center. Marcus shoves a flash drive across the table, as if it were radioactive contraband. Metadata from the documents you gave me. I analyzed everything. And man, he shakes his head. Whoever put this together was careful, but not careful. Enough every digital file leaves a digital fingerprint. Information about the originating computer, the user who created it, the software used, even location, sometimes if GPS is active, and the documents signed by your Sophia. They were created on a computer with a specific identifier that I traced to the Morrison and Associates office, not her workstation. Administrative office. Director level. James feels his adrenaline pumping. Can you identify which director it is? Even better than that. I got login logs from that period. Only one person was logged in to that specific computer at the times the documents were created. Marcus shows a screenshot. Daniel Kemp, Director of Operations. James looks at the data, his mind racing. Is this admissible in court? With a proper warrant? Absolutely. Without a warrant, gray area. But sufficient to obtain a warrant. Can I take this to the prosecutor? You can, but, James, Marcus hesitates. You don't have a badge anymore. Officially, you're a civilian now. And a civilian obtaining this kind of information through, let's call it creative methods, could be problematic. Let me worry about that. James grabs a flash drive. But before going straight to the prosecutor, he does something he technically shouldn't. He goes to the Morrison and Associates office, not as a police officer, as a man who knows the truth and wants to see Daniel Kemp's reaction when confronted. The receptionist tries to stop him. Sir, you can't just, but James has already passed. He walks straight to Daniel's office on the second floor. A memory from a previous visit guides his steps. He opens the door without knocking. Daniel is on the phone. He looks up, initially annoyed. Then he sees James and the color drains from his face. I'll call back, he murmurs into the phone, hanging up. Sheriff Cardwell. What a surprise, ex-sheriff. Technically, James closes the door behind him, but I still have friends. And those friends helped me discover interesting things. Daniel tries to put on a mask of confidence. I don't know what you're talking about. No. James places the flash drive on the table. This contains a complete forensic analysis of the documents used to incriminate Sophia Reed. Metadata shows they were created in this office. On this computer, he points to the machine on Daniel's desk. By you. Silence. Heavy. Incriminating. You can't prove it. I can. And I will. But I came here first because I want to hear it from you. I want to understand why an intelligent, successful man, with everything to lose, would do something so spectacularly stupid. Daniel laughs, but the sound is broken. You wouldn't understand. Try to explain it to me. And then something in Daniel cracks. Maybe it's the pressure of months of keeping a secret. Maybe it's the perverse relief of finally being able to speak. Or maybe it's simply arrogance, a need to justify his actions, to make James understand that he was right. She rejected me, Daniel says, his voice low and venomous. I gave her everything, attention, access. I made her relevant in this company. And when she got pregnant, when she had me son, she discarded me, as if I were nothing, as if I didn't matter. So you decided to destroy her life. I decided to make her understand what it's like to lose everything. What it's like to have her reputation destroyed. What it's like to be discarded. He looks directly at James, his eyes gleaming with barely contained anger. She deserved it. She deserves it. Women like her, ambitious, calculating, using men to climb the ladder. She didn't use you, she loved you, and you betrayed her in the worst possible way. Love. Daniel explodes. She never loved me. She loved what I could do for her. Career, status, and when she didn't need me anymore, when she decided that the baby was more important, she threw me away. James then truly sees the depth of the distortion in Daniel's mind. This is not a rational man who made a mistake. He is a man consumed by such profound narcissism that he has transformed legitimate rejection into unforgivable betrayal. A man who reconstructs his entire reality to be the victim instead of the aggressor. You know it's over, right? James says calmly. This evidence is going to the prosecutor. You're going to jail. You're going to lose everything. Reputation, freedom, everything. You tried to take from Sophia. She still lose, Daniel replies, a crooked smile playing on his lips. Even if I'm arrested, even if she's exonerated, her reputation is permanently tarnished. No company will hire her. No colleague will trust her. I still won. And James realizes, with nauseating clarity, Daniel is right. Partially, because legal justice doesn't repair reputational damage. It doesn't rebuild a career. It doesn't erase whispers and judgments. But there is something James can do. He turns on a recorder on his cell phone. He'd been recording the entire conversation. Obviously, repeat that. The part about wanting to destroy her reputation, even if you couldn't convict her criminally. Daniel realizes what he's done too late. You were recording every word. And now you're going to make a formal statement. You're going to confess everything. Not just fraud, but motivation. Personal revenge. And you're going to do it recorded, signed, and witnessed. Why would I do that? Because if you do it, I'll go to the prosecutor and suggest a plea bargain. You cooperate fully, you get a reduced sentence. If you don't, I guarantee that every sordid detail of this pathetic revenge will become public. The media will love it. Powerful executive destroys pregnant ex-girlfriend. Your name will be synonymous with corporate abuse. Daniel looks at James with pure hatred, but also with an acknowledgement of defeat. You care too much about her, he finally says. It's obvious you're not doing this for justice. You're doing it specifically for her. So what? So you understand. You understand what it's like when someone becomes an obsession. When you can't let go. No, James says firmly. I understand love. You understand possession. They are completely different things. 3 hours later, James has everything. A recorded confession, a signed statement, Daniel Kemp in custody. He goes straight to the prosecutor's office. He hands over the evidence. He watches as the prosecutor, a 50-year-old woman named Helena Chun, reviews everything with an increasingly grim expression. That's understandable, she finally says, and acceptable. I'll drop charges against Ms. Reed immediately, and I'll sue Mr. Kemp for fraud, forgery, and criminal libel. Thanks. But Sheriff Cardwell, excuse me. Mr. Cardwell, need to ask, how did you obtain this evidence? You're suspended. You have no official authority. Friends owed me favors. And Mr. Kemp confessed willingly when confronted. Chen looks at him with clear skepticism, but chooses not to press the issue. Technically problematic, but given the circumstances and the willingness to confess, she sighs, I'll accept it. But James, this can't become a habit. Vigilantism, even well-intentioned, is problematic. Understood. He leaves the office with a feeling of victory. Finally, Sophia is free. Free from accusations. Free from the threat of imprisonment. Free from Daniel. He drives straight to her apartment. He can barely contain his excitement. He knocks on the door, perhaps harder than he intends. Sophia opens the door. She sees his expression. You've discovered something. I found out everything, Daniel confessed. I have a recording. The prosecutor dropped the case against you. It's over. Sophia, you're free. He waits for tears of relief. A hug, a smile, finally freed from constant fear. All she gets is an empty expression. Sophia steps back, letting him in. She walks to the window. She stands there, looking at the street below. Sophia, James asks, confusion tinging his voice. Did you hear? You're free. Daniel is going to prison. You can rebuild your life. What kind of life is this? She says softly, still not looking at him. My reputation is ruined, James. Even with his confession, even with clear proof of his innocence, do you know what people will remember? That I was accused, that I was fired, that there was smoke, and where there's smoke, but there is proof that you are innocent. It doesn't matter. Now she turns around, and James sees something in her eyes that destroys him. Resignation. I've already tried applying to 6 different companies using contacts I had. They all rejected me. Politely. With vague excuses. But the message is clear. Nobody wants an analyst with a complicated history. Even dismissed. Even as a victim. I'm a risk. So you fight. You sue Morrison and Associates for wrongful termination. With what money, James? With what energy? I'm 8 months pregnant. I have $6,000 left in savings. I need every penny for when the baby arrives. I can't spend it on a prolonged legal battle that I'll probably lose anyway. James feels his frustration growing. So what are you saying? That Daniel won? I'm saying he got what he wanted. Legal freedom isn't the same as a restored life. I'm not going to prison. My baby stays with me. And for that, I'm grateful. More grateful than I can express. She finally looks directly at James. But my career, my reputation, my future in the field I've worked in for years, that's gone. and his confession doesn't change that. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Because what James understands in that moment, looking at Sophia standing at the window, pregnant and exhausted and resigned to a diminished future, is not merely that legal victory is insufficient. It is that true justice demands more than a criminal trial. It demands restoration. It demands a voice. It demands that the truth be told, not only in a silent courtroom, but in a public square where reputations are built and destroyed. He spent 15 years operating within the system, trusting that the law was enough, that arresting the guilty was complete victory. But Sarah taught him through her death, through doctors' failure to listen to her, that systems can work perfectly on paper and still fail catastrophically with real people. And now Sophia is teaching the same lesson from a different angle. You can win in court and still lose in life. But James is no longer a police officer bound by protocol. He's a man with connections, with knowledge of how the system works behind the scenes, and with an absolute determination not to let Sophia carry this scar alone. He picks up his cell phone. He scrolls through contacts until he finds a name he hasn't used in years. Rachel Martinez, an investigative journalist who covered a series of police corruption cases 5 years ago. James cooperated with her, then sharing information he technically shouldn't have, helping to expose 3 corrupt police officers. Rachel wrote a story that won awards, and she said she owed him one. Time to get paid. James Cardwell. Rachel answers on the 3rd ring, her voice filled with surprise and curiosity. I wasn't expecting to hear from you. It must be a good story if you're calling. Yes, and it's yours if you want it. I always want to speak. James looks at Sophia, who is now watching him with an expression somewhere between cautious hope and fearful hope. He chooses his words carefully. I have a story about a respected company that fabricated evidence to destroy an employee. About a director who used corporate power and access to systems as a weapon of personal revenge against a pregnant ex-girlfriend. About how the prosecution almost convicted an innocent woman because no one questioned the convenient narrative. And about how the entire system HR auditing colleagues, everyone chose to turn their backs instead of asking, does this really make sense? Silence on the other end. Then, do you have proof? Recorded confession from the perpetrator. Forensic analysis of documents. Timeline showing the physical impossibility of the victim having committed the crimes. And a victim willing to talk. If you treat the story with the respect it deserves, when do I send this? I mean, when can I start interviews? Tomorrow? Today? Send me your address. I'll be there in an hour. James hangs up. He looks at Sophia, Rachel Martinez, investigative journalist. She's going to tell her story, the real one. Not a sanitized version of a police report, but her voice, her experience, her truth. Sophia shakes her head slowly. James, exposing this publicly, everyone will know. About the relationship with Daniel, about the pregnancy, about everything. Exactly. They'll know the whole truth. Not distorted whispers. Not rumors. True. And when companies search your name, they'll find not just a filed indictment, but the complete story of how you were the target of corporate revenge and still fought back. That's not a black mark. It's a testament to strength. What if nobody cares? What if the story gets out and everyone just moves on? Then at least you will have spoken your truth. You will have refused to be silenced. And your son, when he grows up, will be able to read this story and know that his mother did not accept injustice and silence. She fought until the end. Tears streamed down Sophia's face. But this time, they are not tears of despair. They are something more complex: relief mixed with fear, hope mixed with exhaustion, gratitude mixed with a budding love she doesn't yet know how to name. Why do you keep doing this? She whispers. For me. James crosses the room. He stops in front of her. And for the first time, he lets her fully see what he feels. Without professional shields, without proper distance. Because when I look at you, I don't see a victim who needs saving. I see a warrior who deserves an ally. And because he hesitates, then decides, to hell with caution, because I fell in love with you. With the way you fight, with the way you refuse to break, with the way you transform a tiny apartment into a home, and tragedy into motivation. And I can't know. I go let a man like Daniel take that away from you. Sophia doesn't respond with words. She simply closes the distance between them and kisses. It's a soft, careful kiss, full of promise, rather than urgency. It's recognition. It's gratitude. It's the beginning of something they both know is complicated, risky, potentially disastrous. And that's perfectly correct. Rachel Martinez arrives exactly 57 minutes later. A woman in her 40s, with deliberately undyed gray hair and eyes that miss nothing. She enters the apartment with a laptop, a recorder, and a presence that fills the space. "Sophia Reed," she says, extending her hand. "Thank you for having me. James gave me a summary, but I want to hear it from you. Everything, unfiltered." And Sophia tells her story. For the first time, she tells the whole story without fear of how it will sound. Rachel records everything, asks insightful questions, and occasionally utters curses when a particularly outrageous detail emerges. Was the HR manager a woman? Rachel asks at a specific point. Yes, Linda Morrison, the CEO's niece, by the way. Rachel writes with extra force. Nepotism and internalized misogyny. Wonderful. This article is writing itself. They work for 3 hours. When Rachel finally turns off the recorder, there's fire in her eyes. This will publish in 4 days. Front page of the business section, plus a full online article. I have an editor who will love it. And Sophia, she leans in. After you publish, you'll get calls. Lots of them. Some from curious people. Some from other media outlets. But also, significant pause from companies that respect resilience. From CEOs who value integrity. Your story won't close doors. It will open the right ones. After Rachel leaves, the apartment falls silent. Sophia and James sit on the sofa, exhausted but with a hint of hope finally palpable between them. And now? Sophia asks. Now we wait for the story to be published. And we'll deal with whatever comes. But what they don't know, what they can't know, is that 3 people read Rachel's intercepted email to her editor. 3 people with a lot to lose if the whole story comes to light. CEO Richard Morrison is in his office when a nervous assistant enters. "Sir, we have a situation." An investigative journalist is asking questions about the Reed case, about the company's involvement. Morrison turns pale. Did Daniel confess? Apparently. And there's more. It seems that it wasn't just Daniel acting alone. The journalist has questions about internal auditing, about why discrepancies were ignored for months before being conveniently discovered. That's enough. Morrison picks up the phone, dials a private number. "We have a problem. The kind that needs to be managed discreetly." James is driving home. He still goes to his own house to sleep, respecting Sophia's space even with their budding relationship, when he sees a car following him. A black SUV with tinted windows. Not a police car. Not an official vehicle. Something more sinister. He changes lanes. SUVs change lanes too. Maintains a consistent distance. Professional James' heart races. His instinct, honed over years of patrolling, screams, "Danger!" He picks up the phone and dials Sophia. "Hello, Sophia. Listen, I'm being followed. I don't know by whom, but it's no coincidence. Don't answer the door for anyone tonight. No one. Understand?" "James, what promise?" "I promise, but I'll be fine. Just stay alert." He turns it off. He accelerates. The SUV accelerates too, and James realizes exposing Daniel was only the first layer. There's something bigger here. Something powerful people want buried. And he just became a threat. The SUV approaches. So close that James sees the silhouette of 2 men in the front seat. And then, deliberately, The vehicle crashes into the back of his car. Not strong enough to cause an accident, just strong enough to send a message. We know where you are, and we can reach you whenever we want. James controls the car, his heart racing. He accelerates. He loses control of the SUV on a series of fast curves, using city knowledge acquired over years of patrolling. Eventually, he's alone on the road, but the message was received. And when James finally gets home, when he locks the door and checks the windows twice, when he sits in the darkness processing what happened, one thing becomes crystal clear. The real battle is only just beginning. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because what James understands that, night sitting alone in the darkness of his own house, adrenaline still coursing through his veins, his hands trembling slightly isn't exactly fear, it's clarity. Brutal clarity that he completely underestimated the enemy. He thought he was fighting a vengeful man, but Daniel was just a pawn, just a tool. There's something much bigger here, something institutional, something involving people with real resources, real power, a real will to protect secrets. He picks up the phone, he hesitates. It's 2 a.m. Sophia is probably asleep, but he needs to hear her voice. He needs to know she's safe. Disc, he answers on the first ring. James, you weren't sleeping. How could I? After what you said. Pause, are you okay? What happened? He recounts the events. SUV, chase, deliberate collision, implicit message. And as he speaks, he feels the weight of the decision he made, not just for himself, but for her. Because exposing this publicly puts not only him in danger, but Sophia as well. We need to back down, Sophia says immediately when he finishes. Call Rachel. Cancel the story. This isn't worth it, Vale. James interrupts. If we back down now, they win, completely. And the next person they try to destroy, there won't be anyone willing to fight. James, they can hurt you. They can let them try. His voice is pure steel. I spent 15 years as a police officer. I know how to protect myself. And more importantly, now I know there's something bigger here. Something worth investigating. Silence on the other end. Then a small voice. I'm scared. I know. Me too. Raw honesty. But Sophia, if we don't fight this, if we let fear silence us, then all the suffering you went through was for nothing. Daniel becomes a footnote. And the people who are truly responsible, they continue to operate with impunity. So what do? We continue. Public history. We deal with the reaction, and we investigate, because something tells me that the fraud you were accused of wasn't the first. It probably won't be the last if we don't stop this. And something in his determination and that absolute refusal to bow down, even when threatened, ignites something in Sophia as well. That part of her that survived a difficult childhood, that built a career against all odds, that is carrying new life even when everything has crumbled. A warrior part that never truly died, only hibernated under layers of fear. Okay, she says. We'll continue. But James, not alone. If you're going to fight, I'll fight with you. You are 8 months pregnant, and I still have a functioning brain. I still know that company's systems better than you do. I still have contacts, few, but some who might have information. Pause. You spent weeks fighting for me. Now let me fight with you. And James feels a warmth in his chest, because she's right. This isn't about him saving her anymore. It's about partnership. It's about two warriors refusing to give up. Partners. Then, he says, partners. Rachel Martinez's story is published 4 days later. Front page of the business section, exactly as promised. Title in bold, Corporate Revenge. How an executive used his power to destroy his pregnant ex-girlfriend. The article is devastating, detailed, meticulous. Rachel spares no one. Daniel Morrison and Associates, the HR manager, who conducted the dismissal without question, colleagues who turned their backs on her, the system that nearly condemned an innocent woman, and at the center, Sophia. Not as a passive victim, but as an active survivor. Rachel captures her strength, resilience, refusal to be defined by trauma. The reaction is immediate and massive. Sophia's phone rings constantly. Media outlets wanting interviews, but also, just as Rachel predicted, corporations. 3 different CEOs call in person. They all say variations of the same thing. We read your story. We need people with your integrity and resilience. Let's talk. And while Sophia is receiving calls that are rebuilding her career, James is receiving a different kind of attention. Captain Miller calls. Carefully neutral voice. Hale, I need you to come to the station. Now. James is leaving. Expect a lecture. Expect an extension of his suspension, possibly dismissal. What you get is Miller closing his office door and saying, I read the article. I saw you were mentioned. Former Sheriff James Cardwell, who risked his career to expose the truth. Do you know how many calls I've received since then? How many? 17? 14? From citizens saying, we need more police officers like you. 2 from other departments asking if I'm interested in borrowing you for their cases. And 1, he pauses, from the governor himself, saying that story was an exceptional example of dedication to justice beyond the call of duty. James blinks. The governor. Your suspension ends today. And hell, you're being promoted. Detective, effective immediately. Miller shoves a new badge across the table. Apparently, becoming a vigilante for justice is good for public relations. Who would have thought? James receives his badge. You feel a familiar weight, but also something more. Validation. Recognition that doing the right thing even when it costs is worthwhile. And Hale Miller adds, his voice softer. I was wrong. About you getting too involved. About dropping the case. You did the right thing. And I'm sorry for not supporting you from the beginning. 2 weeks later, Sophia is in labor. James is in the hospital, waiting room, not as a father, but as, what? A partner, a friend. Something that doesn't yet have a defined name, but is undeniably real. The nurse comes out. Mr. Cardwell, Sophia is asking for you. He enters, and sees Sophia exhausted, sweaty, but smiling. And in her arms, wrapped in a hospital blanket, a tiny baby with closed eyes and clenched fists. James, she says, her voice hoarse, knows Emma. Emma, this is the man who saved our lives. James approaches. He looks at the baby. He feels something break and rebuild itself simultaneously inside his chest. She's perfect, he whispers. Yes, and she's safe with me, because you fought. Sophia looks at him. Then thank you, for everything, for not giving up, for reminding me that goodness still exists, that it's still worth fighting for. And James, a man who spent years building emotional walls, who lost his wife and almost lost faith in the system he swore to serve, feels tears burning within him. Because this moment, this baby, this woman who refused to break his why, it was all worth it. If you've made it this far, if this story of struggle, redemption, and justice has touched you, if you've ever been in Sophia's or James's shoes, or if you simply believe that it's still worth fighting for what's right, even when it costs everything, then you understand why stories like this need to be told. And if this kind of story resonates with you, if you want to continue exploring these profound human truths, these moments where ordinary people make extraordinary choices, subscribing here is your way of continuing this journey with me. It's your way of saying, I see value in this, I want more of this. Comment below, I'm with you until the end, because when you leave this comment, you're not just interacting with the video, you're joining a community of people who believe that justice matters, that truth is worth fighting for, that love and protection still exist even in an imperfect world. And look, if this touched you in any way, if you felt anger at the injustice, hope for redemption, relief at the ending, leave a like so I know. It's not about algorithms. It's about knowing that this story mattered, that it resonated, that it made a difference. And there's a video over here that continues in that same vibe. with that same emotional depth of stories, where protection, justice, and love intertwine in unexpected ways. Click and follow along there, because stories that matter deserve to be told to the end, and we're only just getting started.